Your life as an Inquisitor. The air in the interrogation cell smells like scorched ozone, old blood, and the specific metallic tang of fear that never truly leaves your throat after 3 decades of breathing it in. You're standing just outside the pool of a harsh white light, watching your heavy black robes pool around your armored boots like spilled ink, while a shivering heap of flesh sits chained to the stone table in front of you. 3 days ago, this man was a respected high deacon of a wealthy cardinal world. But now, he just whimpers prayers to the God Emperor with a cracking voice. It's a useless effort because he personally turned off the Vox relays in this entire block, making sure his pleas stop right to the stone ceiling. So, you take a step forward, and the leather of your gloves groans in the absolute silence. You don't look angry, nor do you look pleased. This is simply the work. Your hand rests on the grip of your bolt pistol, the absolute cold of the obsidian casing seeping through your gloves. The deacon looks up, his eyes bloodshot and wide, searching your face for a flicker of human mercy. But he only finds the silver rosette pinned to your chest, catching the low light of a dying star. He begs you to believe his innocence, swearing on his mother's soul that he had no idea the velvet robes he bought from an off-world merchant were woven with warp-tainted silk. But you've already spent hours studying the secret shipping ledger, and you've seen the way the purple thread twists like tiny worms when the candles go out. Without saying a word, you slide a long silver needle across the metal table, creating a sharp scraping sound that makes him flinch so hard his teeth click together. It's a grim business. But you weren't born to this purple splendor anyway. Your earliest memories belong to the damp, choking shadows of a low-hive orphanage, where the air was mostly chemical exhaust and the older kids stole your shoes before you even learned their names. Life back then was a daily scramble through the rusty drainage pipes, dodging massive toxic rats and the brutal press gangs who wanted to sell your teeth to the local flesh merchants. You always figured you'd end up as a nameless pile of bones in a waste conduit before your 20th naming day, having accomplished nothing out of the ordinary. Everything changed on the day the Grey Men arrived for the Imperial Tithe. They wore plain, dust-colored cloaks that brushed the grime of the lower levels, while the entire Hive militia fell to their knees in absolute terror. An old man with a spinning mechanical eye walked slowly through the rows of starving children, stopping right in front of you without saying a word. His bionic eye made a tiny clicking sound that felt like it was drilling into your brain, further heightening your fear from wondering what he wanted and what would be of you if he didn't get it. He wrapped his metal fingers around your wrist, squeezing so tight you felt your small bones shift, and dragged you into the cold streets. The planetary authorities didn't even log your departure, meaning you were just another statistical error wiped from the local registry while the Inquisition took you as raw clay. The next 10 years were a blur of cold stone libraries and the heavy smell of burning parchment on the fortress moon of Tarsus. You'd think the masters would teach you how to fire a weapon first, but instead, they taught you how to read a man's pulse by watching the vein in his throat. You spent 18 hours a day memorizing the forbidden names of ancient cults, causing your eyes to water under the flickering light of tallow candles, while the tutors watched from the shadows with leather whips. You fell asleep over a heavy tome. The strike across your shoulders was quick and silent, leaving deep scars that still itch when the weather turns cold. You watched 20 other acolytes die during those brutal years, like one who accidentally drank the wrong consecrated oil during a ritual of testing, and another who vanished after she confessed to hearing a singing voice in the library stacks. You didn't cry for them, because your mind was too busy memorizing the exact weight of a heretic's lie to care about companionship. One morning, the old master called you into the central courtyard, where the air was freezing and carried the scent of pine forests from the valleys below. You wondered what kind of grand speech about glory or the salvation of mankind he would give, but he simply held out a small velvet box containing a silver rosette. Its surface was heavily scratched from the hands of the 3 previous Inquisitors who had carried it, all of whom had died in the dark with their names erased from every Imperial record to protect humanity from the things they discovered. As you lifted the silver piece, its weight felt heavier than a lead shield, signaling that your life as a servant was over. You were now the law, the judge, and the sole executioner for an entire sector of stars, moving faster than the planetary governor's execution order whenever heresy reared its head. Your first independent assignment takes you to the ocean world of Cinderdeep, where the planetary governor throws a grand gala in your honor. Inside a spire glowing with thousands of expensive blue crystals, he offers you a cup of spiced wine, smiling with lips slicker than the grease on a sub-level crane. While talking about his absolute loyalty to the Golden Throne, he shows you the massive tithe barges, filling with harvested sea spore, trying to distract you from the truth of his world. But you aren't looking at the barges, focusing instead on the way the servants refuse to lift their heads because their fingers are trembling against the silver platters. You also notice a faint green grease under the governor's finger, which is a specific color that doesn't match any native plant on this world. So you let him finish his arrogant speech about imperial compliance, even taking a slow sip of the wine, though its sweetness tastes like copper on your tongue. Then you reach into your dark cloak and place the silver rosette directly into his crystal glass, making a sharp clicking sound that instantly stops the music across the entire ballroom. The governor's face goes from pink to the color of wet chalk in a single second, and he tries to call his personal guards before realizing your acolytes are already moving through the crowds like wolves in wool coats. The grand ballroom turns into a slaughterhouse within minutes as the panic takes hold. The local guards draw their silver-plated swords, but your personal guard, a massive brute from a death world, fires his heavy stubber directly into the orchestra balcony to suppress them. The beautiful glass chandeliers shatter into thousands of sharp fragments, dropping onto the screaming nobles who are desperately scrambling for the exits. You don't even move from your seat at the high table, calmly watching the chaos unfold through the thick gun smoke. The governor drops to his knees in front of you, begging for a trial under the Lex Imperials, but you lean down and quiet him with a harsh whisper, telling him that an Inquisitor's suspicion is already a final verdict. You find the cult's hidden shrine, 500 levels beneath the ocean floor, where the damp walls groan under the immense water pressure like a dying beast. The air down here doesn't smell like the sea, instead carrying a foul mixture of rotten flesh and ancient perfume that clogs your throat. Your acolytes move in a tight, disciplined circle, keeping their weapons pointed into the dark corners where the shadows seem to move against the flow of the torches. You hold your plasma pistol ready, letting its blue coil hum with a heat that keeps the damp chill away from your face. Suddenly, the things that crawl out the flooded pipes reveal they aren't human anymore, showing pale skin that lets you see the black sludge move through their veins instead of blood. They charge forward with rusted hooks and sharpened teeth, screaming blasphemous names that makes your ears bleed from the sheer malice of the sound. You pull the trigger, and the plasma bolt cuts through the dark like a miniature sun, vaporizing 3 of them in a single flash of blinding light. The smell of burning fat fills the narrow corridor, but more of them just keep rushing over the blackened bodies of their brothers. Eventually, you find the High Priest hiding in a chamber filled with giant, bubbling tanks of sea spore. He's a massive man whose flesh has swollen to 3 times its normal size, showing webbed skin between his thick fingers. He laughs when he sees you, making a wet bubbling sound that echoes off the metal walls as he claims the deep gods have already tasted the world, and your little silver badge can't stop the tide. Instead of wasting breath on an answer, you sign to your tech priest, who instantly enters the code to dump the Prometheum reserves directly into the filtration system. The priest's laughter turns into a high-pitched shriek as the blue tanks ignite, turning the entire chamber into a roaring furnace of white-hot fire that bubbles the black paint on your chest plate. You don't even turn around until you hear his bones snap in the flames, returning to your ship with 3 less acolytes, but knowing the ocean world will stay quiet for another 50 years. However, the long travel between systems is where the real rot sets in for your mind. Your cruiser, the Righteous Wrath, spends months in the screaming violet belly of the warp, and though the Geller fields hold the madness back, they don't stop the noise. Every night you can hear the metal hull creaking, which is a sound that starts to shape itself into mocking words if you listen too closely. You spend your waking hours in the ship's private chapel, kneeling before a massive iron skull while the heavy incense burns your throat. You pray until your knees are bloody from the stone floor, but the whispers don't stop, telling you that your acolytes are looking at your seat with hungry eyes. You start to watch your crew through the hidden spy grills in the corridors, noticing the way 2 ratings share a piece of dried meat while their eyes shift toward the ceiling cameras. It makes you wonder if they're just hungry or if they're passing coded signals about mutiny. One day, you have a midshipman dragged to the cells before his left eye twitched 3 times while he was reading the navigation log. He swears it's just fatigue from the warp glare, but you spend 4 hours personally turning the screws on his thumbs until he confesses to a conspiracy. You have him spaced before the next shift change, watching his body freeze into a gray speck through the viewport because an Inquisitor who doubts himself is a ship that's already sinking. The endless years turn your hair the color of ash and dry out your skin until it looks like ancient parchment. You've seen too many worlds burn and too many good men turn to dust for a cause that doesn't even remember their names. One day, you find yourself on a dead moon on the edge of the Eye of Terror, looking at a black stone obelisk covered in runes that make your nose bleed if you look at them directly. Your Puritan acolytes are the young ones who still believe the clean pamphlets they print on Holy Terra tell you to blast the stone into dust with the ship's macro cannons. But you're tired of fighting the dark with nothing but iron and prayers that never get answered. So your eyes drift to the ancient dagger sitting on the altar. Its blade is forged from a single piece of dark glass that seems to absorb the starlight, radiating a coldness that promises you the power to see through the cultists' cloaks before they can strike. You reach for it, but your young acolyte steps between you and the altar, his hand drifting toward his holster as he talks about the purity of the soul. You don't hesitate, putting a needle-thin laser beam through his throat with your digital weapon before he can clear his leather strap. He drops without a sound, his blood soaking into the gray dust of the moon, while the other acolytes watch in pale silence. You take the glass dagger and slide it into your inner vest, feeling its coldness sharp against your ribs like an extra heart that guides your destiny. Soon after, the sector capital begins to die from the inside out as a massive mutant rebellion breaks out in the lowest levels of Hive Primus. 15 million workers have dropped their tools to take up rusted pipes and stolen laser rifles, breaching the mid-level gates until the elevator gears jam on their ribs. You stand on the high balcony of the governor's spire, looking down at the massive clouds of black smoke rising from the lower districts, while the sound of millions of screaming voices come up the spire like the roar of an angry sea. The planetary defense commanders are running around the war room, their maps covered in blinking red lights that show breached sectors. They want to pull the regiments from the northern continent to defend their aristocratic spires. But you know that would leave the food silos completely unguarded. So, you walk over to the central map table, letting your long robes trail behind you like smoke as you look at the Grand Marshal. You tell him that the lower 5 levels are already lost, meaning any soldier sent down there is just more meat for the mutant stew pots. He starts to argue, talking about the 20 million loyal citizens who are still trapped in the factorums below the fire line. You pull the glass dagger from your vest, letting its dark blade catch the blue light of the hololith until the Marshal stops talking out of sheer terror. You order the tech priests to seal the massive pressure doors at level 300. planning to flood the entire lower half of the city with toxic waste gas from the chem vats. The Marshal gasps, calling it a massacre that will destroy the Hive's production capability for 3 generations. You turn your back on him, walking toward the Vox station while telling him that production can be replaced, but a heresy that reaches the spires cannot. The tech priests don't hesitate to obey your command, using their cold logic to slide the massive iron gates shut with a dull boom that shakes the entire mountain city. Then, the chem valves open, pouring a thick yellow mist into the crowded streets below and turning the screaming masses into heaps of twitching green flesh within 10 heartbeats, while other rebellions end with a grand clash of swords. This one ceases with a wet, rattling cough of 20 million people dying in the dark. You return to your private chambers in the Inquisitorial fortress, sitting in the high-backed iron chair, while the silence of the room feels like a physical weight against your ears. The skin of your fingers is turning a faint grayish blue around the nails, which is a side effect of the glass dagger that sits on the desk in front of you. You hear its voice clearer now, telling you that you did the right thing today, because a garden must be burned to save the soil. You want to believe that voice, because if you don't, then you're just a monster who murdered 20 million people to save a collection of gold leaf spires. You walk over to the small wash basin, splashing cold water over your face before looking into the polished silver mirror on the wall. You cannot recall the young boy from the Hive who wanted to help the Grey Men save the world, seeing instead an old man with hollow eyes and skin marked with brands of 3 different secret societies. One day, Mother Inquisitor will come for you, likely a young Puritan with a clean cloak who will find the glass dagger hidden in your vest. He won't ask you why you did it, putting an explosive shell through your old heart instead. But as you slide the dark blade into its leather sheath, you realize you don't care because the long war only requires that the gates remain closed for one more night. The docking bay of your ship, the Righteous Wrath, is cold enough to turn your breath into small white plumes on the day the ghost ship arrives. In the center of the iron floor sits the Misericordia, a merchant vessel that drifted out of the warp 3 days ago without answering any Vox hails. Its white-painted hull is covered in thick crusts of black space salt, looking like a dead whale that's been rolling in the surf for a year. Your stormtroopers stand in a semicircle around the main boarding ramp, their heavy carapace armor glistening under the bay lights, while their hellguns hum like angry hornets. You step forward, watching the main hatch seals pop with a sound like a wet bone breaking before the heavy ramps drops onto the deck. A wave of air rolls out the ship's interior, carrying a scent of fresh clover and summer rain that shouldn't exist anywhere near this cold stone sector. You're the first one up the ramp, noticing that the iron deck is completely covered in a carpet of tiny white flowers whose roots grow directly into the metal plating without any soil. You walk into the main crew mess, finding all 40 crew members sitting at the long wooden tables with their hands folded neatly in front of their plates. Their skin is smooth and white like polished marble, making them look younger than they should as they stare at the ceiling with an expression of pure joy. You reach out and touch the shoulder of the captain, finding his flesh warm and soft, while his heart beats with a slow rhythmic thumping. He doesn't look at you, repeating a single phrase over and over about how the light has no teeth. Your tech priest connects his data slate to the ship's log core, his mechanical red eyes spinning as he discovers the ship's engines have been cold for 80 years. Yet the life support systems are running at 300% capacity without any fuel. Your new acolyte, a young man named Jeffrey, drops to his knees while drawing an Aquila on his chest because he thinks this is a holy miracle of the saints. But you've seen this kind of false grace before on the planet of Voros, where a cult stopped eating because the air tasted like honey, only for you to find their stomachs packed tight with thousands of glowing white caterpillars that had eaten them from the inside out. So you pull your bolt pistol from its holster and put a single explosive shell through the captain's forehead, spraying the white flowers with a thick yellow fluid that smells like curdled milk. There are no bones inside his skull, only a tight, pulsing mass of white silk that starts to unroll the moment the air hits it. The other 39 crew members don't even scream, keeping their hands folded on the table, while their lips move a little faster. Jeffrey looks up with horror, calling you a heretic. But your Death World bodyguard instantly drops him to the floor with a blow from his heavy stubber. You tell your stormtroopers to prepare the plasma torches and burn the entire ship, telling Jeffrey that beauty is the easiest mask for the warp to wear because a man will fight a monster with a sword, but he'll open his gates for a flower. This decision leads you to the Grand Cathedral of the Inquisition of Tarsus, where you sit in a high stone box while 30 other Inquisitors look down at you from their carved stones like a circle of grey vultures. The air is thick with the smoke of sacred resin and the humming of 1,000 servo skulls that hover in the arches above to record every breath you take. Lord Inquisitor Vane, an old man whose body is 80% brass and ticking gears, reads the charges of murder and heresy from a long scroll of human skin. He asks if you have anything to say before they strip your rosette and send you to the penal mines, signaling the end of your career. You stand up, telling the younger Inquisitors in the tower tiers the Imperium is an old house built on wet mud, meaning someone has to go down into the cellar to kill the things that are chewing on the beams. Vane clicks his iron fingers, causing 2 massive crusaders in silver power armor to step out the shadows with humming power swords to arrest you. You reach into your cloak, letting the dark energy of the glass dagger bleed into your voice as you tell them that if they take your badge, they'll have to find someone else to watch the Eastern Gate who won't sleep when the singing starts. An old woman sitting in the back tier raises her wrinkled hand, telling Vane that a monster who stays on his chain is better than a hero who dies in his first week. Vane pauses, his brass gears whirring with a high-pitched whine before he finally signs the Crusaders to step back into the dark, letting you return to your sector with a stern warning. You're back on the bridge of the righteous wrath, as it clears the Fortress Moon's gravity well, watching the stars of the segmentum look like billions of tiny white pins stuck into a black sheet. Your new acolyte, a girl named Sarah, whom you picked from the Tarsus prisons because she survived 3 years in a cell with a rogue psyker, stands 2 steps behind your right shoulder. She holds out a fresh data slate containing the tithe reports from the forged world of Cyclopia, where the tech priests have stopped using numbers to count their machine parts, replacing them with names that don't belong to any Imperial language. You take the slate from her hands, telling the captain to set a course from Cyclopia at maximum warp speed because the rot on the world needs to be purged before it spreads. The sky of Cyclopia greets you with the color of an old iron kettle, showing vast drifting blankets of orange chemical dust that turn the noon sun into a pale, greasy smudge. You stand on the landing platform of the main forge spire, while a group of 3 tech priests steps out of the steam vents to greet you. They look like mechanical spiders dressed in red silk, their long steel rods clicking against the platform, while their leader, Archmagos Logis 7, speaks with a voice like 2 metal files being rubbed together. He claims their production of heavy tanks is up 12%, but you reach into your cloak and drop a small copper gear onto the metal floor between his legs. The gear has teeth cut at an angle that looks like a row of small, grinning teeth, and it clicks constantly even though it's not connected to any clock. The 3 tech priests instantly freeze, their green lenses locking into place with a sharp hiss of pneumatic steam as they realize what you've brought. Logis 7 claims the gear is just a scrap error, but you ask him why an error from his world was found in the pocket of a cult leader 3,000 light years away. He tells you that the Inquisition has no jurisdiction over the sacred mysteries of the Machine God, warning you to return to your ship before the chemical storms begin. Instead of listening, you take Sarah and your stormtroopers down to the sublevels, inside an elevator cage that takes 3 hours to reach the bottom. The air gets hotter with every level, changing to a thick grease steam that sticks to your skin, while the ancient machine oil on the walls looks as hard and black as obsidian. The elevator finally stops with a grinding scream of metal brakes, opening into a vast cavern where the floor is a lake of old oil with small islands of rusted machinery rising out of a black liquid. You can feel the glass dagger in your vest twitching violently as you spot hundreds of servitors kneeling in the black oil around a massive brass engine that looks like a giant metal heart. The engine is pumping a thick, shimmering silver fluid through copper pipes into the walls of the spire above, which is the exact same substance you found inside the dead crew of Cordia. The servitors are generating a high-pitched metallic screech from their bionic voice boxes, chanting a sequence of numbers that make your vision turn green around the edges. Logis 7 steps out of the shadow, claiming they have discovered the perfect calculation that eliminates all friction, ensuring the guns washed in this fluid will never jam. You don't waste time asking questions, drawing the glass dagger to cut through the thick copper control conduits along the railing. The moment the dark glass touches the current, a bolt of purple lightning explodes from the hilt and runs down into the oil lake, turning the entire surface into a boiling sheet of purple fire that melts the servitors where they stand. Logis 7 shrieks as the purple lightning climbs his steel legs, exploding his brass faceplate in a shower of sparks while the roof of the cavern begins to collapse. You pull Sarah into the elevator cage just as a 3-ton block of granite smashes the walkway, escaping the destruction of the spire as the foundations break apart below. Now you're back in your ship's private cabin, watching the orange speck of Cyclopia disappear into the void, while the Sector High Lords send frantic Vox messages, demanding to know why you destroyed a vital asset. You let the data slate sit on the floor until its battery dies, ignoring their political complaints because they don't understand the true nature of the threat. Sarah enters the room with a bowl of gray ship soup, looking silently at your hands, which are now completely blue up to the wrists from the dagger's corrupting influence. She asks if the conclave will send an executioner for you now, but you just take a slow sip of the flat soup, knowing they've always been coming for you since the beginning. You pull your hood down to hide your extra eye as it opens in the darkness of your cabin, watching the warp fire roll over the viewport while the ship back into the screaming violet of the Imperium. You are an Inquisitor of the Holy Ordos, and you have a universe to break before the morning comes, welcoming the madness because it's the only thing that makes sense anymore.